I really like working with this brush technique for creating marks. It's definitely it can be a rabbit hole, but not because you get sidetracked. It's just fun playing with it. But there are a couple of general rules, and they are first, avoid sharp corners when you apply your brush to your stroke, and also you don't want to use type as your brush source. And just to make that point, I'm going to show you a bad example of that. So let me go to the right layer. So I'm going to type in the letter K, and I'll make it a little bit bigger. And I'll do a Command Shift O. Get the right tool here. Command Shift O. And now move this out of the way so I can apply the brush stroke. So I'll create a circle. I want the circle to have a stroke on it. I'm going to call an F5 to call my brushes, and I'm going to select the K, and I'm going to drag that into my brush strokes, and I'll make that an art brush, and I'll call it K art brush. It doesn't really matter if you label these or not, but I'm not planning on hanging on to this. So you have a couple of options relative to how this thing rotates around the circle. I'm going to go just kind of a standard direction, hit OK, and now I'm going to select my circle, and I'm going to apply the brush I just created. And proportionally, that's horrible. You can see over here that the stem is solid because of the distortion. That's this part over here. And then over here you can see the arm kind of swing open. That's this part over here. And it starts to curve and it works its way around. And it's just an ugly thing. There are other options to this. You can change the direction. This helps a little bit, but we'll go ahead and apply the stroke. But there's still some problems relative to where it reconnects. Um, there are other options that you can work with this. You can take the scissors tool, C for scissors, and you can start cutting exactly on the points, and that gives you a whole different effect. But we're still dealing with garbage in, garbage out. And while it might start to look kind of interesting, there's an easier way to get this shape that it's starting to create, but then also the craftsmanship on this is just falling apart. So the general rule is don't use text. Let me show you what a corner looks like. So we'll go ahead and create a rectangle, and we'll just go ahead and apply the K to that. And you just don't have any control over, I mean, it's interesting to look at. It might inspire you to create something that's a little bit cleaner, but you don't have the control that you want. And but what you can do is you can round the corners, and that helps a lot. So I'll do a Command K again, or rather Command Y. And so that's adds a nice little effect on it. This is still bad because we're working with a K, but those are the two rules. No sharp corners, no type. So let's go create the basic one, and I'll turn off the top layer. Come back over here, I'll put that away. Okay, so generally I start off in class, the tutorial is start off with a simple rectangle. Now you don't have to be this precise. I like typing in specific numbers because that way if I need to make some slight modification later, I'll remember that I typed in the square to be 100. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to rotate this. So I'll go ahead and hold the Shift key down, 45-degree angle. And now I'm going to go ahead and create a circle. And again, I'll make my circle 300 by 300. And I'll put this over here, and I'll reverse this out. And now I'm going to apply this to my brushes. So I'll do an F5 to call that up. Throw that away. Don't want that. Remove strokes. Okay, I don't want that K. So this I want. Drag that over here. I'll put it on the top. Art brush, hit OK. That's fine. And now we'll go ahead and apply it to that. I'll move this out of the way. So I'm starting a shape in here. You can see what's going on. I've got this triangle, or rather this corner is that corner there, this one's there, and then this corner gets bent all along the line till it reaches its starting point. Same thing here on the bottom. So that's the setup in terms of how it works. So the next thing I usually do to make it interesting is I'll select my scissors tool, C is the shortcut, and I'll start cutting the points. So the first one I'm going to cut is this one over here. You won't see a difference because that's where the point started. Then I'll work my way around counterclockwise. And now I have a shape that's starting to look like a mark. And so the idea is there's a sense of continuity within the circle stroke and how it's distorting the square. And now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking in relationship to form and counterform. And so you can select the whole thing and go to your strokes and you can modify this and play around with it. Sometimes it's easier just to select the number. And so I'm just looking for a point where it might look a little bit cleaner. So that's too much. So let's see what 1.5 looks like. And so that could work as a shape. And then of course, because I'm doing this with points that I cut along the stroke, I can cut more points. And in order to make my life a little bit easier in relationship to how I slice the points, I'm going to select the direct selection tool so we can see the points on the line. I'll do a Command Y so we get this. So now we see the points. I'm going to go to the Object drop-down menu and I'm going to slide down to Path and I'm going to select Add Anchor Points. So that divides these individual strokes in half. So that does some simple measuring for me. It's still going to look the same right now, but now I have additional points that I can cut. So I'll do a C for scissors, and then I'll come back over here and I'll start cutting these up. Do a select all so I can get to the points as I move along. And there we go. So very controlled. Something like this would be very difficult to sit down and ink. But when you're working with Illustrator, it just naturally wants to do everything mathematically. I love how this stroke in here continues over to this side. If you wanted a flower that, let's say, instead of having 6 petals, maybe you wanted to have 5, you can subdivide the circle. So here's how I would do that. So let me go ahead and I'll just move this one out of the way. And so again, I'll do another circle over here. Hold the Option key down, 300 by 300. Okay, so I'm going to draw a line. And I'll go ahead and do a Command Y. Select that line and I'll change over to my direct selection tool. And I'll let this snap right to that point. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to rotate this in even increments. So I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to type in 360 and I'm going to divide that by 7. So do Command C for copy, close that, and now I want to rotate this guy. So I'll grab my rotation tool. I'm going to click right there on that point, hold the Option key down so I get the dialog box to show up. And then I'm going to do Command V for paste, and it pastes the angle that I had in my calculator. I'll hit OK. I want to make a copy. And now I can do a Command D, and that repeats the last thing I did. And so now I've got 7 slices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so what I've done here is I've created a place where I can intersect the circle and slice this. So let me put this away for a moment, F5, and I'm going to call up my layers. I'm going to create a new layer, and you don't have to work this way. This is just the way I like to work. I'm going to select my circle, and I'm going to move this to that bottom part so I can lock it temporarily. And now I can select all my strokes, and I'm going to do a Command 5, And I'll go back to my preview with a command Y. And that makes this into guides. And now I'll grab my scissors tool and I'm going to unlock where the intersections are. So I'll go ahead and do an F7 and I'll unlock this and I'll bring this layer to the bottom, and so I should be able to select my circle. There it is. And so grab my scissors, and right there on that intersection I'm just clicking on those spots. Now just go right in there. I think I got them all. Do select all. Yep, I did. So now I'll do an F5, call up my brush again, and there it is. So whoops, I accidentally selected that one. Let me do an undo. There we go. There we go. And looks like I forgot to cut that one with the undo. So I'll grab my scissors tool and I'll cut right there. Okay, so that's the setup. So I've got a 7-point star here and it's based on the rotations. So it's a fun way of working. There, of course, you can use other shapes. So in this case, I'm going to go stick with the square here, and I'm going to eliminate one of the points and just start off with a triangle. And now I'll bring this over here and drag this over here. And it's going to be an art brush. And I hit OK, hit OK, select my flower shape that I created and go with the triangle. I can go that way, or I can go the opposite way and I'll hit OK, and I'm going to leave the stroke behind, but it's going to still create the new stroke. And now here it is there. I can apply it. I get a different shape. And of course, all the while, I can change the stroke here that I'm working with, and I can come up with a different pattern. The other option I have with the triangle is I can move it directional, so it moves us up and down, but it's going to be horizontal, obviously. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. We'll go ahead and leave the stroke. So I'm going to pull this down a little bit. Here's my triangle, so I'll select that, and then that'll give me this shape. And then I can drop that down a little bit to come up with something interesting. So let me do an F7 and hide the guides layer so you can see that a little bit better. So it's a nice way of working, but like I said, this is a rabbit hole. So I'm going to stop the movie here, and I'll make one more short film with a slight variation of the technique, and that'll be the brush movie part B. And you don't have to watch that one. I mean, it'll be short, so if you watch it, you might learn something from it. But if you want to skip straight to the Photoshop process from here, you can.